Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session on Bring English Alive with 5 and 75. I know you've had a busy full day of sessions. I was able to pop into a couple of them, and I know they've been very innovative and informative. And I hope that this will continue in that vein for you. I am Toni Robinson. I work with Discovery Education. I am locally based here in Arizona, and my primary role is to support a partnership that we have with the Arizona Department of Education and Discovery Education. My contact info is on the screen. I put it there so that you can reach out to me if you have any questions following this session, and I will put it back up again at the end of the session as well. I mentioned a little briefly earlier that I am facilitating or being the liaison in a partnership with the ADE and Discovery. And essentially what that is Discovery and the Arizona Department of Education came together to provide digital resources for K-12 schools throughout the state of Arizona. But they also included all of the adult ed programs. So this is a very practical, pragmatic session where I'm going to go through strategies, but I do want to share with you that all of the digital resources that I'm sharing, everything that you see, you do have access to through this partnership at no cost to your program or to you. So by all means, know that you can access this. And if you don't have access, we'll talk a little bit about how to get that later on. So just to get started, I'd love to just get a sense of who's in the room with some introductions. I typically do this in a very interactive in-person environment, but I'm going to ask you to use the chat for that. And then we're going to go into 5 instructional strategies, and this is what we're bringing alive with the 5 strategies in 75 minutes. It is experiential, so I hope you'll join me and jump in, and then I've left some time at the end for some Q&A. So I'm just going to dive right in with the introductions, and I'm going to ask you to just let me know your name and the program you're in, what your role is, and a song title that reflects how you are kicking off this new year. So I know it's going to take a little bit of think time, and I'm ready to wait for that. In the chat for me, just drop in your name and the program you're with, what your role is in that program, so I get a sense of who's in the virtual room, and then a song title that reflects how you're kicking off this new year. And I'll get started, I'll do it as well so that we're all doing it together. And if you don't have a song title, don't freak out, it's okay. If you do, then by all means, put it in there. So we'll wait a few minutes. The song title reflects how you're kicking off this new year, what your mood is, your energy is, what you're feeling, that kind of thing. Just a little fun around the song. And again, the song isn't the biggest thing. So if you don't have a song, it's okay. Seeing some good ones come through. Shake It Off, love it. Thank you. Oh, I love, that's one of my favorites. Gotta Be Bad, Gotta Be Bold, love it. It's My Life, yes. Some good ones are coming through, thank you. All right, nice. I see a little Miley Cyrus in there. Love it. Walking on Sunshine. Thank you for that, Rudy. Great. Well, keep those coming in, and you may not think of it now, and like halfway through, you might think, okay, this is a song that's kicking off my year. Just go ahead and put it in. Don't Stop Believing. I love that. Feeling good. Great. So take a moment and just look at what people are posting. I'll see who's in the room. I see we have quite a representation from Tucson. We've got some Yavapai College, Somerton, all around. Queen Creek, love it. Thank you all for being here. Glad that you're here. So let me get started with one of the ways that I love to get students engaged in my lesson. And this is one of the strategies that we use a lot at Discovery Education, and it involves using images. So throughout this session, you're going to see me use a wide variety of multimedia. And on our platform, that's what we have: multimedia, videos, interactives, images, reading passages, a lot of things that you can use with students to get them engaged. And so on the screen, I have 4 images. And if I were working with you as a class and we were all in the same place, we do a lot of movement and talking at this point. But what I want you to do here is just look at these 4 images and take them in, right? Think about what they might mean to you. What are you noticing as you look at them? And then I'm going to ask you to start responding. But I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just look at the images and reflect on what you notice. So take a look. What do you notice? All right. Hopefully you've had a moment to think about what you notice. And what I'm going to ask you to do now is, and it's a little challenging. Carolyn, are they able to come off of mute?
Yes, absolutely, Toni.
Okay.
Yes, of
Okay,
course.
great. So what I'd love to do is, if you want to speak, just raise your hand, use the hand raised in here, and then we'll let you can come off of mute and just let me know, what are you noticing? Okay, Yesenia?
Change.
Change. Awesome. Tell me a little bit more about that. Where are you seeing change and what are you noticing with the change?
Well, the first time I just looked at the far left, and then I said, well, there's something going on with the snow. Then the volcano is erupting, and then the butterfly is just becoming a butterfly, and there's also some type of eruption in the other one. So for me, they all had to do with change, transformation.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes. Anyone else? Stephanie?
I just noticed how kind of insignificant I feel, like in the just power of nature, and how just amazing it is to look at, and the things that Mother Nature can do and create.
Powerful, right?
Exactly. Power, majesty, just like I felt really small in looking at those things, which is just kind of crazy in a way.
Right, right. But what's beautiful is that you are using your own lens to interpret the images, and the impact it has on you seems really moving. So I love that. I love that. Awesome. Well, I'm not going to ask everyone to come off of mute, but what this is just a way to activate prior knowledge. What I'm asking students to do is start to engage in what we're going to learn about. So today we're talking about maybe making some changes to your practice, maybe shifting the way you do things in the classroom so that it causes a huge eruption with your students and causes them to transform in a different way, because they are more engaged in your lessons. And so this, you can use the what do you notice technique just to wheel your students in, just to hook them, just to get them interested. And what you're going to find with all of these things that bring in images and interpretation is that what your students bring to this is going to determine what they see and how they react to the images that you provide. And so that's just our lead in to get us going. And I thank those of you who participated and shared what you noticed with us. And we're going to continue on with our first strategy. And this first strategy that we're doing is called STEM completion. And STEM completion is a way for students to make a personal connection to what they're learning, because they're going to look at images, they're going to compare them, they're going to analyze, they're going to synthesize, and they're going to determine what the similarities are, what the differences are, and things like that. With this strategy, your students will have to cite evidence. So they'll be able to complete sentences and cite evidence of what they see in an image. They'll be able to identify any key ideas, details, and themes that they see in different things. And so I'm going to share with you the STEMs. What I love about this is many times our students come to us and they don't have the academic vocabulary or the language to use to analyze and synthesize. And we ask them to do things like summarize what that did or give us the main idea. However, we've got to step back sometimes and provide them with the language and the tools to be able to do that. And so that's one of the things that we can do with STEM completion. We're giving them STEMs and we're giving them images, both of which students can access pretty easily. And so some of the STEMs here is I noticed, I observed, I'm curious about, So even if we go back to the images that we just saw and we did a STEM completion with that, if I gave you the frames I have noticed, I observed, that would allow students to have a more rich conversation and discussion about those images and be able to convey what they're thinking, feeling, and experiencing as they view the images. So we're going to try this out and we're going into breakout groups. And what I would love to do is give you a moment in those groups to take a look at the images. So I'm going to put 2 images on the screen. And as you're in your group, I want you to first take a beat and take 30 seconds to just look at the image. You're not going to say a word to anyone. You're just going to look at the 2 images and see, what do you notice? What are you observing? What are some of the similarities? What are some of the differences? How do they connect maybe to a unit of study you have coming up? What might it remind you of? Think of some of those things. And then I'd like you to each take a turn and share one STEM and complete it with regard to the 2 images that you're viewing. So it's a lot going on. You're going to see 2 images. You're going to observe them, analyze them, interpret them, and then you're going to share out. And you can choose whichever order you'd like to go in, and you can even choose a group leader who can facilitate that conversation. But I'm going to give you 5 minutes to just reflect, process, and share out. And then once you've all had a chance to share out, if there's time left, which I'm hoping I've timed this right, but if there's time left, I'd love for you to talk about how might you use this with your students. All right. So are we all ready to go into our breakout groups? Any questions before I send you off? Okay, so this is the image you're going to see in your group. Okay, these are the 2 images that you're looking at. And then again, you're looking at them and you are going to use the STEM completion. So I'm going to give you the images for 30 seconds, and then I'm going to put up the STEM completion. And Carolyn, if we can put our participants in groups, that would be great.
You got it. Thank you, Toni.
Thank you. All right, as you come back into the room, I apologize. I wasn't able to share out the picture while you were gone, but I do hope that you were able, at least before you went in, to take a look at them and have some things to discuss, or maybe you're familiar enough with them that you were able to recall. But just curious to know, did any interesting conversations come about? Did anyone come up with some very unusual observations or things that you think may be challenging for your students as you do something like this? Okay, so again, this is called STEM completion, and this allows us to give our students an opportunity to look at multiple images. And I did it with images. You could do it with a reading passage. You could do it with a video. There's so many different things that you can have students observe and just stop and notice and name and be curious about. And then this is the beginning, right? So we can actually take this and now have our students start to write. We can actually have our students start to engage in a conversation. We can actually have them think about the topic or the theme that we're going to be teaching on. And so I love to give people a moment to just think about the what they saw, what they experienced. And so we're going to take a few moments, and I'll just give you that moment to just think about it. And then if there's any reflection you want to share, please drop that in the chat. If there are any questions you have about the strategy or any like, wow, I could do this, any innovative ideas, please feel free to drop that in the chat and share it with everyone. So I see that someone says prior knowledge, having not been there, might be difficult to compare and contrast. Absolutely. And so if students don't know what those images are, they might not be able to speak to them as the iconic landmarks that they are, but they might be able to compare and contrast, oh, they're 2 statues maybe. I see 2 different cities maybe. So they'll bring to it, as always, what they know, and we can use that as a bridge to get them to what we want them to know. But I love that. Yes, when you compare with others, they bring up things that you didn't think of, which is the beauty of the collaborative aspect of this. Love it. Someone says they can do this when starting a unit on different parts of speech. Great. You are so right. The lack of background knowledge may hinder the ability to speak on images in a personal way. And so as you think about your student population, think about what are some images that might resonate with the students in your community, with the students' ages that they are, with their lines of work that they might be doing, right? So it's going to be really important that you select images that they can relate to in somehow, or that they can find and identify something in that image to discuss. Love that. Yes, personal connections will anchor with new knowledge. Love it. All right. Oh, awesome. So I love Samantha's story about her grandfather coming through Ellis Island, and even that, right? Like having the ability to share stories of immigration, and being able to share their own stories as they bring in the images. You can build on that. Great. And yes, you will probably need to build a lot of foundational vocabulary. But again, think about what you're teaching, the grade level, the proficiency level of your students, and also what images will support the language they know, right? And also, of course, what are some of the foundational vocabulary they'll need? All right, so that was our first strategy. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, and we're going to move on to our second strategy, which is called, Did You Hear That? One of the things I love about this strategy is that it really encourages students to use their imagination. And using their imagination, they're going to hear sounds and clips, and then we ask them to put those together and create a story. And so there are lots of ways to ease into this. I'm going to show you 2 ways that I typically do this. And then you can think about, what would work with the students that you work with, and also what kinds of sounds would tie into some of the things that you're teaching. So students listen to the sound clip, and then they develop a story that they think expresses how the sounds are going to connect with each other. And so this is called, Did You Hear That? So I'm going to play the sounds for you. And what I like to do is just play each sound for the students. And again, I'm not telling you what the sound is. And as with most of this, how you interpret that sound is going to depend on your knowledge, your experience, your background, and all of those things. But every student is going to bring something to it. So listen up, and these are the sounds. Share computer sound. Okay, let's try it again. Hearing that? Sorry, guys. That's number 1. Number 2. And number 3. All right. So you've just heard 3 sounds, and I would invite you, if I were doing this with my students, I would play them again. And I might even ask, what is that sound, right? Ask students what they're hearing. But the next step of this is, now I'm going to ask you to choose one of those sounds, and we're going to create a story. And the sound you choose, and you can choose any of the 3 sounds, will be the first line. You'll use it to talk about the first line of your story. So that sound is going to inform and help you design and craft the first line of your story. So I'll play them all again and give you a chance to choose one of the sounds. And once you've determined which sound you want to use, I'm going to ask you to write the first line of your story and drop that in the chat. All right, so here we go. Sound number 1. Sound number 2. Sound number 3. It's a long one. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few moments and choose one of those sounds and come up with the first line of a story that you want to use, and drop that in the chat for us so we can see what are some of the first lines with. Love these that are coming in. I love that one. We always need rain here in Tucson. Okay. Wow. Thank you, Stephanie. Torrential rains and thrashing winds interrupted Ellie's slumber. Thunderstorms in Arizona may lead to flooding. Yes. I was peacefully napping when. Awesome. So please continue to drop those in. But this allows us to get students to use their imagination. They're drafting a sentence, the first line of their story. And then how I would work with this is you have a few options. You could either have students write a line using each of these sounds, or you could say, use one sound for the first line, pick one for the second line of your story, and really come up with a 3-line story, right? So it's up to you how you use that and how you work through that with your students. But basically, it's a great way to get students hooked, thinking about writing, using their imagination, starting to formulate sentences, which lead to paragraphs, which lead to complete stories, right? And so it's simple. You can, thank you for that, Stephanie. Yes, it's very simple. You can jump right into it with your students. Okay. So this again is called, Did You Hear That? We're going to do another one. And then if we were in an actual workshop setting and in a classroom, we'd sit down, you'd do some writing, you'd walk around, I'd have you read everyone's stories, and we'd have some fun with it, right? But you can see, just if you haven't had a moment to look at some of the ones that have been coming in through the chat, some really great ideas. And this is just, I mean, so many of these, I'm so amped to read the rest of the story, right? Because you guys have hooked me already with the first line of your story. All right, so here's another one, and this is something that I do with students who may not have the writing yet, right? So, or students who like to draw, and I just want to mix it up a little bit. So sometimes I'll say, okay, with this one, we're going to do a sound, but I want you to draw an image that connects the two sounds, or draw an image that reflects one of the sounds. So this is a nice way to get my students starting who may not have the language yet to develop a sentence or to develop the type of sentence they want. They can draw the image, and then I'll put them into groups to talk about, right, what they've drawn, and then we can build out the sentence structure, right? So let's see if I can get this interactive whiteboard to work. That would be all too fun. Do we have the interactive whiteboard on here? I am not seeing it. Okay, not seeing it. So we're going to skip that. But what I am going to do is play the sounds for you so that you can at least hear them, and then think about what an image is that you would draw. So here's one. And then here's the second sound. Right? So again, I won't ask you to draw, or maybe you take a moment and draw where you are on a piece of paper. But if we were doing this with the class, they would draw it out, right? You would actually draw, and then I would put you in groups, and you could talk about, right, the opportunities that you see for your image and how they might connect. And then the next step would be to actually have you start to write. And now once I put them in groups, they could actually come up with a story together. They could start writing their sentences together. They can provide feedback for each other. Lots of different ways that you can use this. I love that Lana says it's very interesting for low-level ESL students, right? It gives them a way to gain access to what we're talking about and to demonstrate their understanding, their listening, their speaking, their drawing, and then their writing. And yes, this is how all the kids in Arizona sound when there's rain, because we don't. All right. So that again is called Did You Hear That? I'm going to pause and see if we have any questions about the strategy, or if you have any ideas for how you would extend this, anything that you would do differently, or that you might add or change or modify for your students. And you can feel free to come off of mute or just drop it in the chat. All right. Then ask you to take a moment and reflect on that strategy. And in this reflection, I want you to think about, how could you use this? What is something that you have coming up this month that you could actually find some sounds and hook your students and draw them in to do? And I have them writing a story, but you could actually have them starting to think about a topic or a theme or a unit that you're going to delve into. So just take a moment and reflect on that, and then we'll move on. Okay. Our next strategy is called half the story. And half the story is great because what we do is we give students, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause because Stephanie wrote, students could go further with this by creating their own iMovies using sounds and images. Love it. Having students create their own. And what I love about that, Stephanie, is we have them now, they're going from consumers of media to creators, right? So that transformation is happening and they're transitioning to a place where they're bringing in sounds and images and using it. Great. Love that. Thank you. Good. If you have any other ideas, please feel free to drop them in. So this strategy is called half the story. And what I like about half the story is that we get students to think about a few things. One is they need to have evidence and more information. That's one, that's really important. And I think it goes just beyond like the academics of life, right? Like, so you see a portion of something, you really need to have the whole story to have a true understanding of what you're seeing or experiencing. The other thing is that with this, students start to make their own connections. And you'll see with all of these strategies that I'm doing, any student can do this because any student can bring their own experience, knowledge, information, and background to what we're bringing in front of them, to an image, to a video, to any of that. And so this is also a really nice way to introduce a topic of study for your students. So they're thinking about what's coming next. It allows them to do some foreshadowing, some predictions. It allows them to conjure in their mind what might happen next. And so this is one of my favorite strategies, because what we do with this is we take a portion of a picture and we have our students look at that portion of the picture. And then we pull it out to a wider shot and we show them the whole picture, and we have them understand what the whole picture is. Similarly, you can do this with a video. You can show a very short snippet of a video, which is kind of half the story. And you have students guess, predict, try to wonder what that is about, and then you show the rest of it, which then reveals all of it. And then you can do it with written text as well. So we'll do a couple of them, and then we'll talk about what you might want to do. So this is our first one. And as you look at this image, I want you to think about what is happening here. What is the story here? Who are we seeing? What is this person's environment? What is their emotion? Where is this taking place? All of those things I want you to consider. Okay, so Lori says this might be an athlete who just won a game. So as the teacher now, I say to you, okay, Lori, what makes you say that? Cite the textual evidence. Where's your evidence here? Right? So now I'm pushing you a little further than just wondering. Now we have to go back to the text like we would do with the reading, right? And we'd have to say, okay, well, what am I seeing that makes me think that? Okay, Stephanie says, I think she's in labor and it looks like she's groaning in pain. Okay. Rudy says the pain of childbirth. Okay. Notice we all bring to this, right? If we've never given birth or we don't know that pain, like that would never enter your mind, right? So great ideas coming in. But then I would go back and say, again, what makes you say that, right? Someone says she's upset with herself. Oh, someone says, okay, so this is what I like about Toni Keys. response is Toni says, and I didn't ask you to do this, so don't be upset if I didn't recognize yours, because I didn't ask for this. But Toni says, my guess would be someone who does fencing. And then she gives the why. There's a collar that we see and a mask in the back. Now we're looking, is there a collar? Is there a mask, right? Sweating, clothing I don't recognize. So it could be a sports uniform. So you see how these are coming in. Someone says she's being tortured. Evidence, perspiration. There we go. There's perspiration. That is evidence of, what did Neely say before? Something's going on, right, Neely? That's evidence. Great. So these are, see how we're all coming in and we're wondering, someone's getting baptized and being joyful and praising, and wow, like all these different ideas. And so that's half the story. Now we give the whole story. And so those of you who guessed an athlete were right. This is Ibtihaj Muhammad, who was a fencer in the 2016 Summer Olympics, and she won a medal, not gold, I think she won bronze. And so this is giving the rest of that story. So do you see how we all had different ideas? Our ideas were based on kind of what we know. Like if you don't know fencing, right? If fencing is not even within your realm of understanding as a sport, you would never think it's a sport. You would never guess sporting for this, right? And so someone noticed and they saw the fencing, the collar, they saw what else did you see? The mask, all of that. So that was great. And so I actually have a little video of her. I'll play a little bit of that for you, where she's talking about her experience. So let me get that and I'll play it. And you can hear her a little bit. So this could actually lead into a larger conversation about so many different things, right?
I'm here with Ibtihaj Mohammed. Welcome, Ibtihaj.
Hi, Blake. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So excited for this.
You are best known for being the first Muslim American to wear hijab for the U.S. in the Olympics. What did that moment mean to you?
Qualifying for the U.S. Olympic team was one of the most amazing moments in my life, and it was only a dream. And to become the first Muslim woman in hijab to qualify for the team, to be the first woman of color to qualify for the U.S. Women's Sabre team, I realized that I was not just changing things for myself, but also for the youth coming up. I want everyone to see themselves represented in sport.
What was your childhood like as a Muslim girl in America?
I never had moments growing up where I felt out of place or I felt different. And it wasn't until really I started fencing at 13 years old in a sport that was predominantly white that I really noticed that me being an African American or me wearing hijab had the power to change how people treated me.
That's really surprising because normally when I think of sports, I think of them as very inclusive. How did you handle ignorance and intolerance?
I've learned that it's really important to be your own biggest support system and not depend on others for validation. That was this really transformative moment for me as a kid when I learned to support myself first and encourage myself and not rely on that coming from others.
How are you using your experiences and platform as an athlete to inspire the next generation?
There's so much about my story that I feel like really relates to youth today. I decided to write a book. It's called Proud, Living My American Dream. And it's for kids out there like you that are feeling sometimes like you can't do something or there's someone around you telling you you're not capable. I had those moments as a professional athlete, as an Olympic medalist. I've been told that, you know, I'm not.
So I'm going to stop there, but I did want to just show you that this could be, you could use this particular activity to expand to a much larger lesson about so many different things, right? So yeah, this is a part of the strategy. And as you can see, if you have the video to go along with it, if you have a reading passage about her, you could get students into that. And then you could broaden this to so many different topics in the classroom and connect it to that. So yeah, that was half the story. So here's another one. Let's see, what do you think is taking place here? Who is this? Where are we? What's transpiring? What do you know? Anyone? Just drop it in the chat. I love the guesses that came in for the last one, so let's see what we get for this. And this time, tell me why. Why do you think that? Like you see someone says, looks like someone's taking an oath. People's court, yes. When I first put it, I thought, Judge Judy, yes. All right. A congressional hearing. Why a congressional hearing? Ketanji Brown Jackson, why? What makes you think this? A woman testifying in court, a basketball game? How could we get basketball here? What makes you think this? Is it, give me some reasons. Now I want some reasons. Why would this be a basketball game? Why would this be a congressional hearing? What makes you think that? Hillary Clinton, suit, female. Okay, we can tell it's a female suit. We see the blue suit, the professional blue suit, right? I recognize the coat. All right. Okay, so microphone, looks like a hand's raised. Great guesses. You guys are bringing what you know. Love it. Arm is raised. The water for the speakers. You see the people sitting behind in rows. And then I do the rest of the story, right? And so this was the swearing in of Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor in 2009. And many of you nailed it right on. You saw the buttons, you know, hey, this is what you wear when you're being sworn in for something, right? And so we have that knowledge and experience, and that's what we bring to this as well. So again, half the story, if we're doing anything on government, on anything like this, gets our students thinking and wondering and gets them hooked, right? Citing evidence, gets them to think about some of the things and the elements that we tend to see in these kinds of environments. And then now we can extend this to a lesson. So that is half the story, and that's doing it with images. Now I'd like to try it with a reading passage. And so what you have in front of you are some excerpts from this reading passage. And so I want you to take a look. And as you look at these excerpts, what do you think this story is about? Suddenly she woke up. Someone had bumped against a chair. She listened. It was quiet. Okay, so I see an intruder. It could be someone in a hospital waking up from a coma. Yeah. Anything else? A haunted house. Yeah, I could see that. All right. Someone fell asleep in the library. I love it. Right away, I'm thinking of a B&E. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. B&E. A baby? Samantha, what's a B&E? Okay, so Stephanie, don't give it away. Don't give it away, Stephanie. Yes, so you know the story. Awesome. Oh, breaking and entering. Yes, yes. All right. So now I'm going to give you more. This gives you a little bit more context. Suddenly she woke up. It was 2:30. She thought about why she had woken up. Oh, yes. In the kitchen, someone had bumped against a chair. She listened in the direction of the kitchen. It was quiet. Okay. Any new ideas about what this could be about? And this, if we were in a classroom setting, I might put you in pairs and say, hey, what do you think? Have you talked to your partner? What do you think the story is going to be about? Now, I'm noticing some of you, no Googling, by the way, no Googling right now. This is all using your mind. So if you're Googling, stop. Some of you bring in your knowledge of other languages. So the title is a German title, and someone says, oh, I noticed the title is about the bread. Interesting. So if you know that, you've got one leg up on this, right? If you studied German, you have another leg up on this. If you've read this story already, you have a little bit more of an advantage. But if you're coming in blind, like most of us, you really don't know. So you're just kind of reading and figuring it out as we go, right? And so someone says a hungry cat. She woke up from a nightmare. And it goes on and on. I'll give you one more round and then we'll talk about what it really is about. So this is the rest of the text. It's not all the text, by the way. So this has the rest of the story, right? But it's not all the story. Okay, so Yesenia says, her husband woke her up. Good, good, good. So as you see, like whatever your first thought was about this, as you got more information, that might have shifted a little bit, right? Because that's what happens when we only have half the story. We have to get the rest of the information, get more context, get more background. So it turns out that this is an absolutely beautiful story of love and sacrifice. And it was written around the time of the Great Depression. And this woman wakes up and her husband is downstairs and he's actually taking bread because things were so tight that you rationed, right? You get a slice, I get a slice. And that's at night, he would get up and sneak out and get the bread. And the story is beautiful. If you ever get a chance to read it, it's Das Brot. I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's the bread. And if you're thinking about doing something around the Great Depression, something around famine, poverty, any of those kinds of things, this is a beautiful story. And it's a great way to hook students because now they have a human connection, right? They know that people were involved, right? This was a time that affected people in different ways. And so as I think about now, I'm going to the facts and the dates and the war and the this and the that, I have that human connection. So this again, Marilyn, this text is not, and don't tell Discovery that I shared a text that wasn't in Discovery. This one is actually not in Discovery, so thank you for asking that. But we have many other ones that you can use. So he was stealing the bread because they rationed the bread and he was hungry. So each of them can get one piece, right, a day. And he was stealing the bread or taking it at night. And if you read the story, it goes on that his wife actually gives him her piece of bread the next day. And she says, I'm not really hungry because she knew he was hungry. This was a time of great hunger and famine and poverty for a lot of people. And so this is a really human connection, right, to make and a great way to introduce some of the things that were happening politically, socially, economically at that time. And that's one of the reasons I love this story. But it's also a great way, I'm trying to show you, if you give half the story or part of the story to get people interested, because many of you thought this was a breaking and home intrusion, or this was, you know, something evil happening, because we were so used to seeing all these things happening when there's a bump in the night. But you can see that it weaves in. Yeah, so if you can, it's a short story. You can find it online. It's not on Discovery, my bad, sorry. But I think it's a beautiful story and a great way to show half the story as a strategy. So I'm gonna give you a moment to just reflect on this strategy. We used it with 2 images. We used it with a reading passage, and think about how could you use this in the next month or so? Is there a story that you want to get students interested in, a theme, a topic, a unit? What might you do? And then any extensions that you might have of this once you use it. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to reflect on that. Please drop anything in the chat that you think may be of interest to others or ways that you might do it. Yes, this activity really helps students expand their creativity. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah. Absolutely. So, you know, as you think about engaging students and allowing them to make those meaningful connections, these are just some of the ways that you can do that by giving them that sense of wonder, right? Because so often we front load with so much, but maybe if we pull back and we ask them to think and wonder and be curious, we'll get them hooked a little bit more. Marilyn says, using key moments to start with building necessary vocabulary to understand the rest of the text. Absolutely. I think that's important. And I'm coming with the assumption that you're doing vocabulary work and things like that, but it doesn't ever hurt to reiterate that that needs to be done. If for no other reason, just so that students can engage in conversation, but then of course, working into the story, being able to get through it and parse through the information. Absolutely. This can lead to a discussion about jumping to conclusions, definitely. And that's why where I said it goes beyond just the academic part, right? It's like about life, right? If we have more evidence, and that piece is key. And I didn't do too much of it here because I wanted to get you wondering, and the ideas were coming, and that's great. But the second step or the next layer, I always drive students back to the text. What made you say that? And not in an accusatory way, but really what I need you to pull out from that text, from that image, what the evidence is, or what led you to say that. So that's really good. Okay, we have someone who said this is their favorite strategy. Yay. Helping students predictions definitely helps them think outside the box. And I invite you to have your students stay outside the box. Love it. Great. Lots of really good information. And I love that you guys can start using these on Monday. Awesome. All right, keep the information coming. We're going to move on to our next strategy, which is called Would You Rather. Some of you may know this strategy because you have done it. There's actually one of my nephews introduced me to a Would You Rather on YouTube. I didn't even know that was out there. But it's a great strategy for getting students to place themselves in the shoes of historical figures and really thinking about, you know, what are some of the experiences these people have had, and then justifying why they would want to be in those shoes or not, right? So what we do with the strategy is we ask students to look at a situation and think about the multiple perspectives. And this is really important if you're, you know, teaching about multiple perspectives and showing that history comes with a variety of different perspectives, then this gives the student an opportunity to step into those and really look at this situation from a variety of different angles. And so this helps us to get students to put themselves in the situation, and then they have to say which one would they rather. When I start this out, I like to do it with something really simple the students can relate to, right? So would you rather post information on Snapchat or on Instagram, right? And so then the question becomes, the next question is why? Why would you rather do that? Well, Snapchat goes away, Instagram is visual, blah, 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 blah. They can give you their reasons. And so I have students think about it first, always think first, and then I pair them up and they can share which they would rather do. Then this could extend to a writing activity. You can write why you would rather do one over the other. Would you rather be a character in Fortnite or Minecraft? To answer this, you have to know what Fortnite and Minecraft are and then be able to justify why. Would you rather watch a movie in the movie theater or watch a movie on Netflix? Again, these are not historical. These are probably not related to anything you're doing academically, but this is just a way to get students thinking about how to work through this activity. So you could find something that your students can connect to or relate to and juxtapose those two things together. Would you rather do A or B, C or D? Just to get them in the practice of flexing this muscle. Two things that are important here. One is something they know about. And then the second thing is having them justify. So it's not okay to just say, I'd rather be a character in Fortnite. Why would you rather be a character in Fortnite, right? So I need to say, because X, Y, or Z, because those characters have this, Minecraft doesn't, Minecraft is pixelated, like whatever it is, they need to know. So what does this have them, what does this require our students? For one, they have to know the similarities and the differences between the two things that we're asking them about. Secondly, they have to understand the depth, right? With a little depth, what those things are about. So if we're asking about historic, like, would you rather be Thomas Jefferson or Alexander Hamilton? We have to know who was Hamilton, who was Jefferson, what did Hamilton do, what did Jefferson do, what, you know, why would I want to be one or the other, right? So that's how that works. So here we have another one. Would you rather, this gets a little deeper, right? This gets connected to our content. Would you rather serve as a soldier in the Vietnam War or a soldier in the Iraq War? Whoa, now I need to understand, what were the conditions of soldiers in the Vietnam War? What were the conditions in the Iraq War? What were some of the fallout when they came back for both, right? Like, what were the ages, all kinds of things. Would you rather live through the experience of a tornado or a hurricane? This gets a little bit more into science, right? What happens when there's a hurricane? What kind of damage happens? What happens to people, right? What happens when there's a tornado? Where are there shelters for hurricanes, tornadoes, all of these kinds of things? Would you rather, now we get into a math question. Would you rather buy something that's 50% off or something that's 30% off with an additional 20% off? Now, is that the same? Is it different? Like, which one of those discounts would you want to have? So you can think about this in terms of whatever content area you're teaching. You can find would you rather questions that require your students to really think about what they would prefer. Does that make sense? So I would love for you to get into a group, and I'm going to put you into breakouts again, and I'm going to have you do a would you rather. Now, these three are here for you to choose from. However, I love choice, and I would give my students choice. So if you don't want to use one of mine, if someone in your group has a would you rather that you would rather use, you guys can work through that one. If it's more connected to what you're teaching, what you have coming up next week, by all means, create a would you rather that works for you. And hopefully you had a chance in those sessions to be able to come up with a variety of different responses. I hope that was a good experience. And what I invite you to do is to think about, you know, what's coming up for you this week, this month, this year, and what are some would you rather questions that you could create connected to units of study that you're doing. And so, yeah, thank you, Damon. I appreciate that. So that you know that you have a few, and then you can put your students in groups and have them talk about it. Now, this is something you can do beforehand, like before you introduce a topic, and just kind of a generic question to get students wondering and curious about something. But it's also something you can do at the end of a unit or a topic or a theme where you have students, they need to draw upon the knowledge and information they should have learned, right? And justify it. It's almost kind of like a debate. I do want to show you something that's on Discovery that we have that can sort of facilitate this kind of thing. This is these are interactives, and this one is around the enduring debate between Jefferson and Hamilton. And this kind of walks through some of the background about them and what transpired and what went down and all of that good stuff. And this also reads aloud for students.
A new government with a dilemma. In the 17...
And so this gives them some historical context, kind of a breakdown of the two gentlemen and kind of what their positions were at the time and who they were. And so this is something where, like, if you do the interactive and if you've done a unit around this topic, you could have students debate, but you could also say, now, given all that we know about Jefferson and Hamilton, would you rather be Jefferson at this time period, or would you rather be Hamilton? And they, of course, would have to know, right, a little bit of context to who they are, what they stood for, what they did, what their lives were like, and things like that. This is another one. This is a more contemporary one. It's historical perspectives on globalization. This one specifically ties into the T-shirt industry. And this is showing students, you know, when we get our T-shirts, there's a whole lot going on to make that happen and to bring those T-shirts to market. So it gives you a little bit of background on each of the people, what their lives are like, who they are, what they experience, where they live, and how they fit into this whole T-shirt thing that's going on, right? The whole industry. And so once your students have had an opportunity to understand the dynamics and who's involved and all of that, then you could ask them to think about the different perspectives, right? Like the perspectives on this, but also think about what is their perspective and who would they rather be, which part of this whole ecosystem would they rather participate in. So this is another one of those interactives that will allow you to do that with your students. And then this one explores the culture in Russia and Central Asia after China, after the Soviet Union. And so it's giving you a timeline, it's showing all of this, but within here, you could, once students have the information, again, we can ask those questions. Would you rather live in China at this time, or would you rather live in Russia, and why? So any of these areas that we're talking about, whether it's history whether we find a connection to math, it's really asking students to understand what they're learning, like have they learned it? And we'll know whether or not they learned it. Because if you can't come up with a reason, then maybe you don't have enough information or knowledge to be able to do that at the end of this unit, right? So those are just some of the interactives that are available to you to use and to do. I think we're out of time. I'm so sorry, you guys. The session ends. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you.